Jacob Licklider here, and it is the final special for Doctor Who's 60th anniversary, The Giggle, written by Russell T Davies and directed by Chania Button. And as always, these videos are my immediate thoughts watching the episode, and I think that's actually important to say in this one in particular, because this one is kind of the controversial one, at least in terms of what it does. And I'm going to be honest, I'm feeling kind of conflicted. This is going to be spoiler filled, largely because while I tried with Wild Blue Yonder to avoid talking spoilers, I think with the Giggle, the problems of the episode can't really be discussed without talking those spoilers, and so I'm going to do that. Before I get into it, just a bit of a housekeeping note. I will be continuing these with the Christmas special and Shudigawa's first series. But for the Christmas special, as always, it may be coming a day or two later, anywhere up to a week at some point in there, because I spend Christmas with my family, and I'm not going to have access to any of my recording equipment during Christmas. But if you'd like, follow my Letterboxd, and you may, at least for the Christmas special, you will probably get some jumbled immediate thoughts there before I can get one of these videos out like I did with Wild Blue Yonder. Of course, if you're okay with spoilers, keep listening, but this is your spoiler warning. So, before The Giggle came out, there was this massive leak on, I believe it was Reddit, that basically gave away the plot for both The Giggle and the Christmas special. And as we got closer and closer to the 60th anniversary, it was essentially revealed that the plot leaks about the Christmas special were true. And sadly, with The Giggle, it means that it ended up being that even those plot leaks were true, which, first off, I really, really hope we can avoid some of these leaks going forward, because I don't enjoy them. It made engaging with this episode slightly more difficult because I already had this preconceived notion of what the plot was going to be. Yes, you can say, well, you can just, it doesn't matter. This happened with the Timeless Children. And yeah, it happened with the Timeless Children, and that was slightly different as the leak. And, obviously what was on screen was different from the leak. But adding that preconceived notion doesn't help the viewer engage with the text as it's being presented. You're engaging with the text through the lens of a leaker, and the leaker may have their own motivations, especially in the way that they present it. And unfortunately, I'm going to be honest, I actually didn't like the climax all that much. I think it strongly hurts the episode, The Giggle, overall. And that's largely with the ending. But it's also clear that the ending is very deliberate, but also vague enough that some things can be denied that I don't entirely agree with or like. So I'm going to start with the ending and get all my complaints out of the way, because outside of the last 15 minutes, I actually loved what was on screen. And I think some stuff was amazing. So with that last 15 minutes, the big leak was by regeneration. So the 14th Doctor regenerates and splits into David Tennant and Ncuti Gatwa. And we leave the Doctor on Earth, the 14th Doctor, as played by David Tennant on Earth, that is, with his own TARDIS. Now, I will say I'm glad Davies outright justified the fact that this is really being allowed because the Toymaker is a higher being. They are a creature from outside the universe. They do not abide by the laws. They cannot be explained. That's something that is reiterated throughout the episode wonderfully. I think it is fascinating. And so I can understand why. I have a feeling that this might be something that, I'm going to be honest, that maybe some of these issues, if I rewatch the episode, I might come to lessen. Whereas with, say, the Timeless Children, those issues only worsened, largely because the Timeless Children as an episode has some core problems of being mostly exposition and not a plot, whereas this is a plot point at the end of an episode that was full of plot. And that's sort of where I can see my emotions going, but I also don't want to promise that because, again, I'm processing the episode essentially raw. I'm thinking about it as I've just finished watching, and I've been trying to avoid other people's thoughts before actually sitting down to record this as much as I can. But yeah, I don't think the bioregeneration thing works the way it ends. I probably would have been more fine with it if the bioregeneration thing was then undone. Because as a vehicle to defeat the Toymaker, I think it's actually quite clever. The climax being just a simple game of catch is really, really interesting. It was heavily foreshadowed early on in the episode very well, and I think it sets itself up nicely. There are a couple of aspects of the scene that I don't think I like. There's this weird comment that Donna makes about the 15th Doctor. Oh, is saying something along the lines of, "Oh, you come in different colors," which, okay, so cards on the table. I'm a white man, and so obviously I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on racism, but that feels kind of racist to me, and just it was a comment that made me feel uncomfortable because why would someone say that? It's weird, but yeah, things like that, and then keeping on topic of the actual bioregeneration. If the game of catch ended with, well, now it's time for the 14th Doctor to go and recombine and not have the 15th Doctor take out a hammer, smash the TARDIS in two, which I will say, if you're going to do this plotline to give the 14th Doctor a TARDIS and you smash the TARDIS in two, Davies justified that well in the text. I just don't particularly like that plot element as a whole, at least currently. It's also worrying because it now leaves the door open just for David Tennant to have two Doctors to milk dry instead of just one, because Tennant is popular. But it also, on the other hand, I could also see the argument being made that maybe it's a way to avoid just bringing back David Tennant every time we need a bump in the ratings. Because let's be honest, that was at least part of the motivation for the 60th. It was needing to try to get eyes back on the show. But I don't want to go into that. So it's this idea that I don't like. Now, that's largely what I didn't like. What I did like, a lot of the episode, I loved a lot of what was in this. First off, Ncuti Gatwa, in just the moment he was on screen, he was outperforming and stealing the show from a very difficult cast to steal the show from. The man has charisma. The man has energy. I am very, very excited to see what we might be doing. I have a feeling that Davies is going to be writing the 15th Doctor and then new companion Ruby Sunday almost in a brother-sister sort of dynamic. Maybe, I don't know if it's going to be a dynamic of equals. With some of the dialogue at the end of the episode, it feels like that a lot of this was trying to let go on a lot of the baggage, while this also being an episode where a ton of mystery boxes were set up. Also, he reused the last shot of the last of the Time Lords, which was, I think, is meant to be a fun reference, but please, Russell, please don't give us another Master Revive through Necromancy plot. Please. That's one of the things I hate about the End of Time, and I hate a lot about the End of Time. Because, seriously, it's dumb. But I think that might have just been a cheeky reference, because there were a lot of cheeky small references here to the show as a whole. But Gatwa just stole the scene. I love his energy. Feels like he's going to be a very human Doctor, but a very different human-esque Doctor to Tennant. And I think that could be something that I get behind, especially as I prefer my Doctors to be more alien. Obviously, the 7th Doctor is my favorite of the Doctors. I'm also a massive VNA stan, so there's that aspect that you have to just remember when you're talking to me about which Doctors I love. But I think just Gatwa is amazing. I will also say the first 45 minutes up until the bioregeneration happened is just fantastic. The visuals are incredibly creative. Davies has clearly been like, well, the Celestial Toymaker, the original serial, outside of some of the general yellow peril of the costuming and the use of the term Celestial, which I think the term Celestial in the original serial is meant to be space, but because this is the 1960s and you're dressing him in a Mandarin costume, you have also created that aspect of racism there. So he's just referred to as the Toymaker throughout this, though he has the Doctor say Celestial at one point, which I feel is like a nod. Davies seems to be aware of, hey, I don't want to erase the problematic aspects of Doctor Who's past, and I don't know how I feel about that entirely, but the Toymaker itself is used wonderfully. Neil Patrick Harris is incredibly camp as an actor, and that camp is a very sinister camp here. He is going through several accents, mainly German and French, and then a very exaggerated American accent at one point in a crucial scene that really might be one of the best scenes of the episode, because it's let's examine what happened to the Doctor after, like, let's lay out all the loss the Doctor has basically experienced in a abridged format after Donna left the first time, and I think that scene is amazing. It's told through this puppet show. Patrick Harris is great. Tennant is acting off of Harris wonderfully, because the Doctor is largely silent or making excuses, which, again, has this interesting idea of against the fandom, because, and I'll be honest, I agree with the Doctor of, like, well, Amy and Rory got to live super long lives before they died. Clara is effectively immortal. Bill's consciousness lived on. The Flux, there isn't really one for the Flux. That's just the decent chunk of the universe is destroyed. That's, like, I can't. Because, yeah, and it's an interesting dialogue. It's a very interesting scene. I love it. Again, Harris is great. Tennant is great. Before that, we get some creepy toys who were obviously once people. And you have, again, when Neil Patrick Harris isn't on screen, after he's been revealed as the Toymaker, which was revealed in sort of that first scene with the Doctor and Donna in 1925 in the shop, we have actually, we actually have, we have this, he has this presence throughout the episode. I also, I believe it's Kieran Hyman and Rich Tipple who did some colorization work for these tiny clips of when the Doctor remembers the Toymaker, and we flash back to basically they're clips from the final test, the existing episode of the Celestial Toymaker. Fabulous colorization work, and Chanya Button frames the new footage with Harris there wonderfully, in particular, to really tell the story and really sell the face change of the Toymaker without giving an explanation, because this is this is a being that cannot be defeated. There's this idea. There's this idea in that he's an elder god, and I love it. It tickles the parts of Doctor Who that I love, where the Doctor isn't actually the highest authority, which is amazing to see from Davies, who set up the Doctor as the highest authority post the Time War, and then Moffat largely built on that. Sometimes attempted to deconstruct it, but I don't think he always deconstructed it very well. But again, I don't want to turn this into here's my issue with each of the showrunners. And I think just the surrealism is great. It's wonderful. And then I think before this, the sequences on Earth with UNIT trying to explain what's going on is wonderfully full of character dynamics. We're bringing back a bunch of characters. Shirley Ann Bingham, played by Ruth Madeley, is back as a scientific advisor for UNIT. I really do hope we see her again in the future. Melanie Bush is our classic Who returning companion for the episode. She actually gets quite a bit of a focus. I've seen some people saying, why was she in the episode? I think she was there for fan service, but I think it's actually quite well acted fan service, and it helps set up sort of the reflection that the Doctor's just keeps going and going. I think that's why you need an old companion from pre-Eccleston here, and I yes, it's a role that could maybe have been filled by anyone else, but I think actually giving Mel the focus, considering as a companion on television, she wasn't characterized particularly deep. There was, character traits there. Her backstory wasn't there. We're hinting at some ideas that, hey, that backstory that we know of, that they fought the Master and the Autons. See, business unusual, might be darker, that her parents might have been killed, which I think is an interesting choice, a very dark choice, but an interesting choice. And I think Gemma Redgrave as Kate gave a pretty good performance, as well as the whole idea of this 6 notes being transmitted into everybody's mind, making them go crazy, and the idea of everything being a game in a way, as games as a way to view the world. I think it's fascinating ideas. I think they get time to breathe. It's just those last 15 minutes that really, really make me conflicted. And that's why, like, if I had to give a number score for this episode, knowing that I gave The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, which is where the sort of roots of the bioregeneration came from, sort of a 5 out of 10 overall. And that's largely because there are other issues with The Stolen Earth and Journey's End. I think I'd probably give this one a solid 6. So, we're in that good territory, just not in that great territory. And it's one that I'm definitely okay with rewatching, and I could very possibly rewatch and come away completely different. That's important to note because, well, I'm just coming off of this. I'm conflicted. But I think it was good. I think I enjoyed it. There's some stuff that I think was brilliant. I don't know. I don't like the fact that Davies has pulled the same trick twice, and it's a trick that I didn't like the first time. I'm glad the leak was wrong, because the leak implied the Doctor and Donna were going to be coupled together at the end. They're not. I prefer the idea of the Doctor, this Doctor finding a family and an actual home on Earth. It might be a setup for a unit spinoff in the future with David Tennant, which, okay, but that would be maybe too close to just making more Doctor Who with David Tennant instead of an actual spinoff. But that's all questions for the future. So I think I'm actually probably going to leave it there. Please start a conversation in the comments. I will be monitoring the comments, so please. If you see your comment disappear, there's probably a very good reason why. I have noticed a couple of comments on the Wild Blue Yonder video being a bit incorrect, shall we say, and inflammatory in ways that I'd like to avoid. Of course, if you like what I do, please check out me on social media, my blog. I review sci-fi. I am going to be restarting my Doctor Who EDA reviews very soon. I have a couple more books to get through before I go back to those. And then of course, if you like hearing me, I have a comics podcast we post every other Monday. It's called Fresh Faced Comics, wherever you get your podcast, very good podcast, as well as on YouTube. We are in the middle of Marvel Comics right now. We're doing The Incredible Hulk. It is great with my good friend Joey. Other than that, like, comment, subscribe. I don't know if I'm going to try to make any more videos until the Christmas special or and beyond, but I will definitely be doing it there. So other than that, I will see you next time.